A theory of optimal space and time. So if you notice, there's kind of like parameters that humans follow, and there's individual differences as well, both in terms of space and time. So space, for example, like look at cars going down the freeway. There's a certain amount of space that tends to be between each car. I mean, that's not absolute, that can vary, but there's a certain, seems to be a certain formula to that. Just like when birds fly, there seems to be a certain pattern or space to that. When people walk, together, there seems to be a certain space between them, by and large, on average. And when people, talk, there seems to be a certain rate of speech, although that can vary. There seems to be like a certain number of words in a sentence generally. I mean, we don't have 500-word sentences. That would be quite the run-on sentence. There tends to be a certain number of sentences in a paragraph. I don't know the exact number, but maybe 3, 4, 5. We don't have, 10,000 sentences in a paragraph. So all these spacing issues seem to be kind of like ingrained in us to know kind of like how to orient in space. Even in a room or in a house, we tend to have like a certain amount of furniture in a room. We seem to have a certain number, of steps in a staircase. I mean, that could be related to, the difference between floors, but even spatially, like the way we live, the way we interact, there's a lot of spatial dimensions to that. Now, time, and I'm going to get into the theory of why I think these things are. Time is kind of similar to that. Like we have a certain amount of time that we persist in something before we take a break. We have a certain amount of time that we spend doing our morning routine. We have a certain amount of time that we spend getting ready for work. We have a certain amount of time that we spend doing a presentation. Now, obviously, there's individual differences. We have a certain amount of time that we talk to our spouse when we get home. Obviously, it can vary if something is significant, but these tend to be somewhat habitual. They fluctuate according to patterns. So basically what I'm getting at is that there's optimal space and optimal time that is kind of patterns, both for individuals and for the collective. And what do I think contributes to these optimal space and time patterns? I think a couple dimensions. One is that I think it's equilibrium between risk and reward. So let's take the car example. Like when you're following another car down the highway, you want to get to the place that you're going as fast as you can. So you want to be close to the other car, but you don't want to get in an accident. So you don't want to be too close to the car. So it's kind of like a push-pull phenomenon. The reward is making you go as fast as possible, and the risk of getting in an accident is making you slow down. So you have those competing forces, and when those are in equilibrium, then you have the behavior. So I'm going to give some more examples, but some person might want to argue, but it might be an overgeneralization, or might not, that almost all behaviors or a lot of behaviors follow this equilibrium between risk and reward, especially as it relates to optimal space and optimal time. So, for example, an optimal time example may be, I just think of this off the top of my head, out of the blue. Maybe one person asked somebody out on a date, or maybe they're in a relationship, they asked them to get married, and the other person said no. And they have to think about, do I want to ask again, or how long do I want to wait before I ask again? Do I want to think in a different way? So it's kind of like in optimizing the time and the method, and doing that based upon equilibrium between risk and reward. Like if I don't ask the person out and I really like them, then I am minimizing the risk. But if I do ask them out and I really like them, then I'm possibly maximizing the reward. Or maybe we already went on a date and we really like each other. How long do I wait until I ask them again? If I ask them really soon, I'll be happy because I really like them and want to see them. But if I wait, then maybe it'll build up a little bit more excitement in the other person. So it's kind of like that risk and reward, push and pull back and forth. So you can think of a lot of other examples, but a lot of behaviors, especially related to space and time optimized, do seem to relate to this dimension of finding an equilibrium between risk and reward.